Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the second in the series of Brexit webinars from the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine. Today we'll be talking about importing animals and animal products after Brexit. My own name is Tom Probozzi. I'll be your sort of moderator and quizmaster, if you like. I'll be directing your questions to our very highly qualified speakers today. We have Noreen, Galvin and John Higgins, who are both veterinary inspectors here at the department and have a wealth of experience in the area, and they'll be taking you through today's proceedings. So without any further ado, I think I might hand over to John Higgins, who has the first presentation for us.
Thanks, Tom. Thank you all for joining us today. As Tom said, my name is John Higgins and I'm a veterinary inspector in the Border Control Post Policy Division of the Department of Agriculture. I will give you an overview of what is required to import products of animal origin from the UK after the 1st of January. My colleague Noreen Galvin will present after me on the veterinary checks in a border control post. I will describe how you can prepare to import animal products into Ireland from the UK from the 1st of January. I will describe what documents you will need, such as veterinary health certificates. I'll give a brief description of Compso Products and the UK land bridge situation. Also describe prior notification of consignments arrival in the BCP and the submission of documents to the BCP. All of these requirements are going to apply to the UK, regardless of whether there's a EU-UK trade agreement. Products from animal origin, unless otherwise exempt, must undergo veterinary checks. These veterinary checks must be performed in a border control post. The BCPs are currently located in Dublin Port, Shannon Airport and Dublin Airport. Rosslare will be designated as a BCP at a later stage. These controls are necessary to ensure that imported animal products conform with animal health conditions in order to prevent the entry of exotic diseases such as foot and mouth disease, and to ensure that the products conform with public health conditions in order to prevent the importation of food unsafe for human consumption. These controls are mandatory on animal products and live animals at the entry point into the EU. The controls are harmonised in BCPs across the EU, and that means the same rules and standards are followed in all of the EU's BCPs. Veterinary controls consist of documentary, identity, and where required, physical checks. Noreen will describe these checks in more detail in her presentation. And all of these checks are overseen by official veterinarians from the Department of Agriculture. That's all happens in the BCP. For animal products to be permitted entry into the EU, they must meet certain requirements. Products from the UK will also be expected to meet these requirements. The products must come from an approved country listed in the relevant EU legislation for that product. It must come from an approved establishment. The same applies for establishments in the UK. The exporting country must have a residue monitoring plan for that particular product category. Consignment must be accompanied by a veterinary certificate, which must match the EU model for that particular animal product. And this must be completed by the competent authority in the third country. The animal product must be appropriately packaged, labelled and transported. This can be checked during the identity and physical checks stages of the veterinary checks. The consignment must be presented to the BCP on arrival into the EU. Consignment will be considered non-compliant if it does not present to the BCP at this point. The operator responsible for the consignment, as the name suggests, takes responsibility for the consignment on arrival into Ireland and makes declarations as the importer or on behalf of the importer. And if you're importing food into Ireland from the UK on the 1st of January, you'll have to decide who your operator will be. So it can either be yourself or an agent acting on your behalf. The operator is responsible for obtaining copies of the health certificate or catch certificates in the case of fish and all the other supporting documents. The operator can be a natural or legal person. A legal person is a company, but the user must be a natural person. This person will be the first point of contact for the BCP staff if there are any queries, and is also responsible for any fees that arise from the veterinary checks. And to register as the operator responsible for the consignment, you'll need to visit the department's Brexit registration page. And the link for that page is found on this page here. And you'll also find further information on the registration process, such as information on the role of the operator responsible for the consignment, and also a link for the department's online registration portal. So you access the portal to register as an operator. The registration mentioned on the previous page will register you to use the Tracent system. This is an online platform created by the EU Commission, and it's on this platform that operators responsible for the consignment can create a shed, which is an important document in the importation process. As you can see on the link on this bottom of this page, by accessing this, you can find detailed guides for creating sheds. So we'll give you a step-by-step process on how to create a shed. The shed that I mentioned on the previous page is the Common Health Entry document. This is created by the operator responsible for the consignment. This must be done at least 24 hours prior to the arrival of the consignment in the BCP. And this serves as prior notification to the BCP of the consignment's arrival. The minimum 24-hour period will allow the BCP to perform the documentary check part of the veterinary checks. In order to ensure that the documentary check is done in advance of the consignment's arrival here. And any issues discovered during the documentary check can be solved before the consignment actually arrives here. Important point to note is one veterinary cert is allowed per shed. Also, the information entered on the Common Health Entry document reflects the information on the health cert, such as the establishment of origin and information on the products such as CN code, weights, package numbers, and other details. So what needs to be checked in a border control post? Live animals need to be checked, such as horse and cattle. Animal products such as food products containing products of animal origin. Compso products, germinal products that include semen, ova, embryos, and animal byproducts such as pet food. Also, hay and straw must be controlled in a BCP. This is for animal health reasons, in order to prevent entry of exotic diseases such as foot and mouth into the EU. The combined nomenclature, or CN code, is the customs tariff code and is used for classifying goods. It's the specific list of what needs to be controlled is found in Regulation 2019/2007, and the list for composite products is found in Decision 2007/275. The products are listed in these regulations by their combined nomenclature code. And for ensure the code for your particular product, you should contact the Revenue Classification Unit through the link on this page, or through contacting the revenue through the email address on the bottom of this page as well. Regulation 2019/2007, as I said in previous slides, lists the products of animal origin required in veterinary checks in the BCP. They're displayed like this. On the left, you can see the CN code. So 0202 is CN code for meat of bovine animals frozen. In the middle column, there's a description of the product. Then the column under qualification explanation can be further qualification. So all products under that CN code may not require veterinary checks. But in this case, all meat products require veterinary checks. In general, animal products must come from approved establishments. There are very few exceptions to this. One is honey. These establishments are inspected and approved by the relevant competent authority of the third country. These establishments must be on the relevant EU approved list at the time of certification. And the approved lists can be found through the Commission's link on the bottom of this page. So from the 1st of January, the UK's list of approved establishments will be on this page. And in order for imports of products of animal origin from the UK, establishments must be on these approved lists. The veterinary certificate is the most important document of this process. It must be based on the relevant model as laid out in EU legislation for that particular product. On the veterinary cert Certain details must be completed, such as the place of loading. This is the place where the products are to be loaded onto the means of transport to the EU, such as where the container is put onto the ship. Country of origin is where the finished goods are produced, manufactured, or packaged. The place of dispatch is the last third country establishment of the export chain from which the final consignment is transported to the EU. The competent authority of the country of dispatch is responsible for certification. That means if the products are dispatched from the UK, it's the UK authorities that are responsible for certification of those products. Other important information indicated on a vet cert is a seal and container number. If a seal number is named on the health cert, a seal check alone may suffice for the identity check part of the veterinary checks. Otherwise, a more in-depth inspection of the product is required, and this happens in a different location in the port, which may lead to delays in the consignments or exit from the port. The original health cert must accompany the consignment to the BCP and is retained by the officials in the BCP. It's important to note that certs must be issued before the consignment leaves the control of the competent authority of the place of dispatch, as retrospectively signed certs are not in general accepted in the BCP. On this issue, importers must consult with their suppliers, their official veterinarians, in effort to ensure that arrangements are in place to ensure that the correct certs are available and will be completed correctly for each consignment. Compso products also require veterinary controls in a BCP. And Compso products are foodstuffs for human consumption that contain both processed products of animal origin and products of plant origin. But the plant material cannot be present just to lend special characteristics such as taste, texture, colour. An example of this would be strawberry yogurt, which is a dairy product and not a Compso product. Or the plant material can't be there just for technical reasons, such as required for the manufacture of the product. An example of this would be a can of tuna with sunflower oil, which is still a fishery product and not a Compso product. An example of a Compso product is a pizza with cheese and ham. And CN codes for Compso products are listed in Decision 2007-275. Not all Compso products require veterinary checks. For a product to be exempt from veterinary checks, it must meet the requirements of Article 6, 2007-275, or be listed in Annex 2 of that decision. To be exempt from veterinary checks, the products must, amongst other requirements, must not contain meat, must be either shelf stable, but the final Compso product must have been fully cooked. So in summary, Compso products either require a health cert or meet the requirements for derogation, but required commercial documents, as outlined on the link on the previous page. The FSI, in conjunction with the Department of Agriculture, have created an interactive training module on Compso products. This may help you decipher the import conditions that apply for your Compso product. And you can access that training module through the link on the bottom of this page or go into the FCI website. And if you need any further advice with or on Compso products, please contact the Brexit Call email address. As deciding if a product is a Compso product or not can be difficult. It can also be difficult to decide what checks are required for a Compso product. So if you need any help on those issues, just contact the Brexit Call email address. Many importers will use the UK land bridge, and this involves the transport of EU goods from one EU country to another via the UK. What is described here is the current situation, but how the checks are performed is subject to change. The goods are transported across the UK under customs supervision. They must re-enter the EU through a BCP. The documentary check prior or pre-notification through Tracent is currently required. On that point there, for Ireland, there may be a different system for the documentary check, but for going to France, the Tracent is required. Where the documentary checks are satisfactory, no further action is required by the Department of Agriculture. Certain goods require a seal for intercommunity trade, such as terminal products. and they will also require a seal for using the land bridge. Customers will also have their own checks, in addition to the Department of Agriculture's checks. Noreen will go into this procedure in more detail in her presentation. But in summary, documents must be submitted to the BCP in advance of the consignment's arrival, such as the Common Health Entry document, as mentioned earlier, and also a copy of the health cert. Prior to the arrival of the consignment in the BCP, documents should be submitted through the DAFM import portal, such as copies of the health cert or other accompanying documents, such as bills of lading or other commercial documents. Further information on this import portal will be available soon and available through the link on the bottom of this page. So in summary, if you're the operator responsible for the consignment, you must register with DAFM by visiting the register or import or export page on gov.ie. Another point is to decide who will be your operator responsible for the consignment. So trying to be yourself or an agent acting on your behalf. You must determine the CN code for your product. This is not only for veterinary checks purposes, but for customs purposes too. You must provide the correct veterinary health cert, and this must be completed correctly. Therefore, it's important to ensure that your suppliers and the official veterinarians are prepared for this process and that they're prepared to issue these health certs. You must give 24 hours prior notification through creation of a shed on Tracent. Then you must submit documents to the Department of Agriculture through the import portal. Then the consignment must be presented for checks at the border control post. For any further queries, you contact the Brexit call email address or phone number on the bottom of this page. And thank you for your attention. My colleague Noreen Galvin will explain in more detail the veterinary checks in the border control post.
Thank you very much for that, John. Before I go to Noreen, I might actually go to a few questions for you because there are only a few questions, so we might ask them while they're fresh in your mind. The first one is in relation to animals that are moving for breeding purposes. That's from Ruth Matthews, and Ruth wanted to know if the requirement of notification 24 hours in advance is still in place. I don't know if that's something that comes into your area.
The requirement's still in place for live animals as well, but depends on the very specific cases, what the requirements are, like health certs and all that. So if the person wants to ask, send us an email directly to Brexit call or to yourself. Yeah, answer the question specifically, but the 24-hour requirement is still there.
So if that doesn't answer the question, I'll give out my email at the end of this session, and any unresolved questions can be sent to me, and I'll make sure that we get them answered for you in a little bit more detail if necessary. The other question is from Leonardo Cheney, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. If I'm not, Leonardo, my apologies. And it's to do with veterinary certs accompanying container shipments on short sea routes. Leonardo was wondering if it's acceptable for the cert to be sent as soon as the document, as soon as the consignment is loaded at the UK warehouse, or does it have to accompany the actual
the legislation says it has to accompany the consignment to the border control post. Before it leaves the border control post, we must have a valid health certificate for that product.
Okay.
But in the question there, I think he mentions that it's issued at the time of its leaving, so I'm not.
Well, what I might do is, I'll give out my email at the end of the session, and I might ask.
For any specific questions, we can,
to send that on to me, and we can see about getting him more of a detailed answer on that. So in that case, I think we might move across to Noreen, because Noreen obviously has some slightly different aspects to go into. So without any further ado, I will hand over to you, Noreen.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So I'm going to talk about the import controls process also, probably just maybe more of a practical aspect to it, and the process as it occurs in the border control post. Sorry. Now, so as John mentioned, under EU regulations, all of the animals, the products of animal origins that are imported into the EU from the third countries require import control checks. And these controls will apply to imports from Great Britain, regardless of whether there is an EU-UK trade deal. The checks are mandatory and they aim to reduce any risk to human, animal and plant health imports. So what is the import controls process? Well, there's three main stages to it: the documentary checks, the identity checks and the physical checks. So if we take the documentary checks first and we talk about how you can prepare in advance for this stage of the import controls process. So number one, as the importer, I would, DAFM would strongly encourage you to get in contact with your UK supplier in advance of requiring to import their products, and talk to them and engage with them and see if they can meet the EU requirements regarding their establishment and any establishment in the supply chain or the production of the final product, to ensure that they are either EU approved or listed. Will they have an official veterinarian available to fulfill the necessary requirements for certification of the products that you want to import? This is important. It's important that you ask these questions in advance. And the other thing I suppose to mention is, if you are picking up an entire load from one site, is there an option for a competent authority seal to be applied to your load? So this is we'll mention this now when we come to the identity checks and the advantage of having a competent authority seal. So it is a seal that is put in place at the time of certification of the products and the loading of the products. It's put in place by the competent authority. So in this case, it would be, the DEFRA authorities. The other question to ask your UK supplier is, how will you handle rejections? Do you have a plan in place with your UK supplier to accept back any products that are rejected? And this is obviously a personal business arrangement between yourself, but where it comes into play is that any products that need to be re-imported back into the UK because they've been rejected at an EU border control post require notification to the UK's border control post, and that involves IPAFs, which is their UK import system. So this is why this is something that if they are going to accept back rejections on your behalf, then they may also have to notify IPAFs of the arrival of such products to the UK, back into the UK. So once you have engaged with your UK supplier and you're happy that your product can be certified, that their establishment is certified, etc., the next question you need to ask yourself is, who is going to be your operator responsible for the consignment? Now, this is a very important person in third country EU, in the third country EU import process. It can be yourself, the importer, or it can be an agent acting on your behalf. But the important thing is that they must be registered on the EU's import platform, Tracent. They must be registered for that activity, for the person responsible for the load and subsequently the operator responsible for the consignment. And in order to register on Tracent, if this person hasn't done it yet, you need to go through DAFM. You need to register it through DAFM, and they have an online registration portal, which is available as a click-through link on gov.ie/agriculture. The responsibilities of the operator responsible for the consignment include that they must be able to access all necessary paperwork. So they must be able to have access from the UK supplier of a copy of the health certificate, invoices, packing list, commercial documents. These are called supporting documents. They must notify Tracent 24 hours in advance of the load arriving at the border control post, so in this case Dublin Port or Rosslare Port, and they do that by creating a shed, which is a common health entry document for each consignment, and they do this on Tracent. And John showed you some showed you where to find the information on how to create a shed, etc. on Tracent, and all the information is available on the gov.ie/agriculture platform. In addition to creating the common health entry document for each consignment, they need also to submit the documents to the Department of Agriculture 24 hours in advance. And this is in order to facilitate the documentary check. And it's important to mention that the operator responsible for the consignment is the contact point for the staff at the border control post for any queries on the documentation. So if we have issues, if we see issues with the health cert or with the shed or with something, the metrics aren't adding up, the operator responsible for the consignment is the person that we will contact first. So once they have their shed generated, they're going to submit the documents 24 hours in advance to the Department of Agriculture. So what do we need? We need a copy of the health certificate. We need the common health entry document, the shed P that they have created on Tracent NT. We need the single administrative document, so the SAD number, which we appreciate won't be available 24 hours in advance, and they will be able to re-access the online portal to submit this information. If you're importing a product, a fishery product, we need the SFPA's IUU verification. And just to point out that the original health certificate must travel with the load. So it either travels with the driver in the cab, or if the load is going to be an unaccompanied load, so a low as such, we were talking about a weatherproof envelope or a weatherproof container on the outside of that container where the health cert could travel with it. So that's important to mention, that the original health certificate must be presented by the driver to the border control post at the time of the identity or the physical check. So when are the documentary checks carried out? So they are carried out. So as soon as we get the information from you, which is ideally 24 hours in advance, we start carrying out the documentary checks. And it's important to point out that 100% of consignments of products of animal origin and live animals require a documentary check, i.e. they require a health certificate, they require a shed P, and we carry out the documentary checks on the copies of these that the operator responsible for the consignment has submitted to us. Again, all queries are directed to that person from the BCP staff. So once we complete the documentary check, and we do this based on the copies of the paperwork, the consignment will be assigned to a further either an identity check or an identity and a physical check. Again, important to point out that products of animal origin, 100% of them will have an identity check. So once we have the documentary check done, then as I say, we have assigned you to an identity check or a physical and an identity check. The customs will have access to our system, so they will know what check that your load has been assigned. The lorry driver on the ferry will receive their routing via customs. So they will be routed to maybe Terminal 7, and then once they have fulfilled their custom requirements, they'll further receive their routing either to T9, which is where plant health inspections are done, or T10, where products of animal origin are physical checks and full identity checks are carried out. So on the identity check, we have two types of identity checks. The first one is called a seal check, and this is carried out in Terminal 7, and it's carried out in a lane, a drive-through booth. As we mentioned earlier, the seal is a competent authority seal that's placed on the load, and the number on the seal is also entered on the health certificate for each consignment that is on board that load, so that we can easily cross-reference the seal number with the health certificates for that load. Important to point out that the seal must be intact, so it should not be tampered with. It's the legitimacy of that seal, it's the fact that it's on the health certificates for the consignments in that load that allow us to carry out the identity check using this competent authority seal. So if that is the case, and if you are going maybe to utilize the groupage export facilitation scheme, there may well be the option for the competent authority seal in this scenario, or if you're picking up a full load from one premises, you definitely need to ask your UK supplier about the option of a competent authority seal. A seal check as a form of identity check is a much more efficient identity check. The second type of identity check is called a full identity check, and we carry it out if there is no competent authority seal on the load, or even sometimes if there is a seal but we have just some concerns about the paperwork, or there's some discrepancies we're not 100% satisfied with, we may subject that load to a full identity check. In this scenario, the trailer is put onto a loading bay at the border control post, and in Dublin Port it would be Terminal 10. Now, in order to carry out the full identity check, it requires that each of the consignment on the load be accessed. So therefore we would have to partially unload the load or partially turn it out, and the degree of this would be proportional to the number of consignments and the method of packing of the load, in order that we can access all of the consignments on board and cross-check the metrics, cross-check the labeling, make sure it is what it says it is, the lot numbers, etc. So as you can see, the first form of identity check, the seal check, is a far more efficient way of doing it, if it is possible to have your load sealed. Now, physical checks. So not every consignment of product of animal origin requires a physical check. The rate varies with the type of product that is being imported. So most food for human consumption that is of product of animal origin will have a 15 or a 30% inspection rate. So fresh poultry has a 30% inspection rate, fresh milk has a 30% inspection rate, fresh meat has a 15% inspection rate, and poultry products, meat products, composite products would have a 15% inspection rate. And what that means is that 15% of all the consignments of those products that come through the port or any border control post every year would be subject to a physical check. And what does a physical check entail? Well, it obviously has a full identity check. Once you open it up, we're carrying out a full identity on the load, and we're also checking other parameters. So we're checking the temperature of the container, the temperature of the commodity, to make sure that it is either chilled or frozen or whatever it is meant to be, the travel conditions that it's meant to be under. We're going to make sure that the packaging is intact, it's not damaged, and that basically the commodity is fit for entry into the EU. Now, some consignments may be subject to sampling for microbial contamination or for residues, and sampling is carried out at the time of the physical check. So once we have done our documentary, our identity and our physical check, then we make a decision. If they've all been compliant, we make a decision then to accept the load into the border control post. I'm sorry now, because my slide is slightly out of now. So if we accept it, we validate the Common Health Entry document on Tracent, we inform customs, and then the load is free to enter the EU and to go to its place of destination. If there have been any issues at any phase of the import controls process where we have deemed them to be non-compliant, then we can reject or refuse the entry of that consignment into the EU, into Ireland. So the main reasons why rejections occur, the most important reason, or the most common reason, is documentary errors. So by far 2/3 of the rejections that occur currently on third country imports in Dublin port would be due to documentary errors, and then 12% due to inconsistencies between the documents and the identity check. So there could be an incorrect seal number, or there could be an incorrect lot number, or just the incorrect health cert has been sent for the product that's in the trailer. So some of the common reasons for refusal, and this is not an exhaustive list, there are multiple reasons. There are 29 reasons that we can cite on traces when we're doing the shed if we're rejecting it. But most important reasons, the documentary reasons: missing certificate, absence of the original certificate, it's the wrong model, the dates or the signatures have been incorrect, and it goes all the way down to actually exporting something from a non-approved establishment. Now, hopefully that won't happen in these scenarios. So what happens to rejected goods? And so options are to return to the country of origin. And I mentioned this when I suggested when you're talking to your UK supplier to mention the option of what would happen in the case of refusals, because it requires notification on the UK's import system to notify them that the product is coming back to the UK. The other option is to destroy the consignment. Now, the fees for storing the consignment prior to destruction or prior to a decision being made to return must be met by the operator responsible for the consignment. There are fees for the import controls process. There's fees for each consignment that goes through the import controls process, but in addition to that, any fees for storage of rejected consignments would have to be met by the operator responsible for the consignment. So as we said, have a plan in place for those potential rejections, but hopefully we won't have too many of those. So just to sum up, and the key points to prepare now in advance of the 1st of January is to consult with your UK supplier, verify that your products can be certified in the UK for EU import, verify that what we mean by certification is that the establishment is listed, that they have availability of an official veterinarian to carry out the certification in the time frame required. Decide who your operator responsible for the consignment is going to be. As we mentioned, they are such an important person in the import controls process. This operator responsible for the consignment must register to be such an operator on Traces NT, but this must happen via the DAFM registration portal. You have to register with DAFM first so that they can initiate your registration on Traces NT. So those first three things will help you have an efficient documentary check. And then when we come to the identity check and the physical check, assess your freight presentation. Remember what we said, the advantage of a seal load if it was possible. Now it can be a single or a multi-consignment load. If you're bringing in a groupage load or using the groupage export facilitation scheme, you'll have a multi-consignment load and your load would hopefully be sealed. This would allow you to have a seal check as an identity check. But one point I must mention is that just because your load is sealed doesn't negate it requiring a physical check. If you have consignments on board that require a physical check, so again, what did we say? We said 30% of fresh poultry, 30% of milk, etc., requires a physical check. So just because your truck is sealed doesn't mean that it won't be picked for a physical check. And just to appreciate that groupage and mixed loads, by their nature and complexity, they're slower to process. As we mentioned, they require longer time frame to unload, to access all the consignments for both the identity and the physical checks. So I think that's it for now. As I say, it's important just to prepare, get ready, ask the right questions, get your operator responsible for the consignment up and running, and make sure they have registered with DAFM and then subsequently registered on Traces. So thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Noreen, for that informative talk. We do have a couple additional questions. We might bring John back in as well because they might apply to either one of you. Are there any additional requirements for movement of live animals from Northern Ireland to the Republic of Ireland? That's from Roisin Green.
I can take that. Currently, under what we've been told about the protocol, no, not currently, but check. We'll just keep posted, but not at the minute.
That's all to do with the resolution of the free trade agreement and so on. Yeah, but under the protocol, yeah, that's right. I have a question from Marilyn Fitzsimons. I think it does apply more to exports than it does to imports, but it's not impossible that either one of you might have an answer. When they are loading frozen pizzas with ham and cheese for them to go via Dublin port, do they still have to wait 24 hours before sending them to the port, is the question. That may not be one either one of you can do, in which case I can refer to someone on the export side.
Yeah, I think that this is a question that we have been asked before, and I think it's just due to maybe just some misunderstanding. No, if they're exporting, they won't be using, they won't need to do that unless it's something to do with the land bridge and going to France, etc. But from the point of view of exporting, no, they don't have to. If they're exporting to the UK, they don't have to put it up on Traces. They don't have to check in at Dublin port.
Okay, thank you for that. I have two from Jacinta Murphy. I think the first of them may have been answered, which was, does the 24-hour notification period apply to all products of animal origin or only live animals? I think you did actually answer that during your presentation.
Yes, products of animal origin and live animals.
Yeah, but the second one was, are import certs required from the 1st of January or from the 1st of April?
Import certs are required from the 1st of January.
From the 1st of January. And the final one I have here is from you. I may even have more, I'm sorry. Some coming in now. Eugene Brennan is asking, are imports from Northern Ireland subject to the same procedures? If so, where's the BCP? But I think under the protocol that was already answered. Let's see, are there any other ones? No, I don't believe there are. If there are any other ones that we've missed in the meantime, what I will say to people is my email address, and I'll ask you to write it down. I should probably get it put up on screen at some stage. I don't have it for today. It's tom.fabozzi, that's F for Frank, ABOZZI, and that's at agriculture.gov.ie. So if you have any further questions relating to the presentation today, I can either direct them to Noreen or John for answer, or to the appropriate section if they don't apply to exactly what was said here today. We will have further webinars every Wednesday between now and Christmas, probably into the new year, going into issues such as the land bridge and so on. So keep looking on our social media channels, keep looking on our website, and we will have more information for you as we get it. So thank you very much to all of you who joined today. Thank you.